All right, you guys. So this is chapter 6. Chapter 6 is titled Interpretation of Medication Labels and Orders. This is the second lecture of chapter 6. But again, if you guys are following me, you should follow me. Let's again pull out your lecture notes that I provided for you, and I'm going to start and pull out your book, and I'm going to start on page 157 because your lecture notes begins to talk about your practice problems starting on page 157. So practice problems A: interpret the following prescription and write the SIG that would appear on the prescription label. So if you look at the prescription itself, I'm going to try my best to kind of, provide what the book is showing you. But this is the prescription for number 1. And it has Astrovastin, 10 milligrams, number 30. And the SIG says 1 tab PO nightly at bedtime. Kind of wrote off the little box there. And right up under there, it says prescription interpretation. All right. And then it also says label instructions. I'm only going to write this one time so you guys can kind of follow me. But what is the difference between the two? What are these problems telling us? Well, when it says prescription interpretation, you are to read the prescription as you see it. All right? Again, prescription interpretation is you reading the prescription as you see it. So, for your prescription interpretation, it will be written as the following. I'm going to come down here at the bottom, and I'm going to say my interpretation of this prescription will read, and this is what you will write, all right, is Astrovastin, 10 milligrams, quantity 30, all right, and I would say 1 tablet by mouth, nightly at bedtime. All right, that is what your prescription interpretation should read. I read this prescription to say, I interpret this prescription to say Astrovastin, 10 milligrams, quantity 30, 1 tablet by mouth nightly at bedtime. All right, but the next thing is label instructions. Well, what do they mean by label instructions? I'm going to come down here to the bottom, kind of drawing arrows so you can see. Label instructions is you as the pharmacy technician translating the SIG code for the patient to read on their prescription bottle each and every day when they take that medication. So again, it has to be in a complete full sentence. You use the correct verb. You provide a form, a dosage form. You provide the route of administration. You provide the frequency, and you provide any additional information, regardless if it's given to you or not within the prescription itself. So my label instruction will read, for the patient to read it, will read, take 1 tablet by mouth each night at bedtime. All right. You could also say take 1 tablet by mouth nightly at bedtime. Doesn't matter. But the key is that you're using the format I told you by providing the verb. What's the verb in this case? Take. You're providing the dose. The dose is 1. You're providing the dosage form, which is tablet. You're providing the what? Route of administration, which is by mouth. And then you're providing the frequency, which in this case is each night at bedtime. All right. And I know some of you guys may say, well, why don't you just say take 1 tablet by mouth at bedtime? Because in the prescription itself, the doctor specified 1 tablet by mouth nightly at bedtime. Everybody's bedtime is different. Some people work overnight, so their bedtime is during the day. So this particular medication, the doctor wants them to take it at night when they're getting ready for bed. So you have to specify that. All right. Let's do another one. I'm just going to do. So that was number 1. Number 1 could be found on page 157. So let's do number 2. Number 2 is on the next page. It's on page 158. Well, again, what you're doing is that you are determining the prescription interpretation. What does that mean? That means you are going to read the prescription as you see it. Read it as you see it. So my interpretation of this prescription, so what I will write on that first label, that first line, is it will read hydrocodone with APAP. APAP happens to be Tylenol, 5/500, quantity 2, 1 or 2 tab by mouth every 6 to 8 hours as needed for pain. That's what you interpret that prescription to read. For those that want to see me write it out, I interpret this prescription to read. That first line will say hydrocodone, I'm sorry, my writing is a little sloppy, so let me start back over. It will read hydrocodone with APAP 5/500, quantity 20, 1 or 2 tab by mouth every 6 to 8 hours as needed for pain. That is what your prescription interpretation for number 2 should read. Hydrocodone with APAP 5/500, quantity 2, 1 or 2 tab by mouth every 6 to 8 hours as needed for pain. That is what it should read. Just to give you a little background, hydrocodone with APA is basically saying it is a combination of hydrocodone, 5 milligrams, and extra strength Tylenol, 500 milligrams. And it's all in one tablet. Well, what will my prescription label read? What are the label instructions? What should that read? Well, remember, who looks at the label instructions each and every day? The patient. The patient looks at their label instruction to determine what they should do with their medication. So again, you have to use the correct format. So for your label instruction, this is for the patient. You will translate that label instruction to read, take 1 or 2 tablets by mouth every 6 to 8 hours as needed for pain. Okay? Some of you guys may be asking me, what is the difference between prescription interpretation and label instruction? Or some of you may be wanting to ask that question. Well, prescription interpretation is you reading the entire prescription as you see it, starting with the drug itself. So again, I interpret that prescription to read hydrocodone with APAP, which is Tylenol, all right, 5/500, quantity 20, 1 or 2 tablets by mouth every 6 to 8 hours, as needed for pain. That is what I interpret the prescription to read. But my label instructions is different from my prescription interpretation. My label instruction is me providing a complete sentence for the SID code for the patient to read. It's for them to understand. So you have to have a verb, which is my take. I have to have a dose. My dose is 1 or 2. My dose form is what? Tablets. My route of administration is by mouth. My frequency is every 6 to 8 hours. And that additional information is what? As needed for pain. That is the difference between the SID code, which only reads 1 or 2 tabs by mouth every 6 hours as needed for pain. There's no verb there. You have to include that within your label instructions. Your label instructions are for the patient. It has to be in a complete sentence. All right? So, I have done the first 2 examples for you. So you guys need to keep that in mind, that prescription interpretation is you reading the entire prescription as you see it, and your label instructions are you transcribing that SID code into a complete sentence for the patient to understand. So for instance, the last one that I'm going to do for you guys is I'm just going to read out number 3. So my prescription interpretation shall read Premarin 0.625 milligrams, quantity 30, 1 tablet by mouth daily at approximately same hour. That is my prescription interpretation. My label instruction will read, again, your label instruction is for the patient to understand. It has to be in a complete sentence. It will read, take 1 tablet by mouth daily at approximately the same hour each day. Moving forward, I want you guys to go ahead and do practice numbers 4 through 15, and this will be the end of the second portion of the Chapter 6 lecture.